What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Intentional podcast. My name is Miles. I get to be the pastor here at Treasure Coast Community Church in Stuart, Florida. We are embarking on season 2, and I got our life groups and missions pastor here at TC3 with me, Chad Elliott. What's up, Chad?
Hey, Miles. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Man, I'm so glad that you are on the pod, and I'm excited for the people to get to know you. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got here.
Yeah, that's a story in itself. Dude. Yeah. A little bit about me. I've been at TC3 for 2 years actually today.
No.
Yeah, 2-year anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank
That didn't
you.
pop up on my Connect teams.
Yeah.
That's a real problem. Anyway, we'll talk
we're
about
here,
that
man.
later.
Yeah. So that was my first Sunday. It was 9/11 2 years ago. Been here. My wife and I moved here 2 years ago. Life groups and missions pastor. Kind of how we got here was our former lead pastor, Gordon, sent me a text message, didn't identify himself by name, said he was a pastor in Florida and that there was a position that he thought I would be good to fill.
He didn't tell you his name in the text?
Nope.
Nice.
And at the time, Katie and I only knew our best friends who lived in Miami. They were church planners. And so we were living in Portland, Oregon. And I looked at Katie and said, "What do you think about this?"
Just on a whim, random day. Were you at work when you got the text?
I was working.
Yeah.
We moved to Portland. We were doing our thing out there, and got this random text. I thought it was spam, so I asked her about it.
Right.
And she was like, "Worst case is it's nothing. So just respond and see what happens." And then, long story short, it ended up being a real person.
Yeah.
It was Gordon, and so ended up getting to know him. Ended up coming to TC3, and then even though for us, mountains and the seasons and all of that is kind of our
Crucial,
preference,
yeah.
We felt like God was calling us here to be a part of TC3.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for the last 2 years. Grew up in Missouri, lived in Arkansas, Oregon, and now here in Florida.
Yeah. Now, tell me, so first off, if you know Gordon and you're watching this, you understand why the no name is so hilarious. Gordon goes to places like Starbucks and tells them that his name is Stone, and we'll get a coffee and, "Hey, Stone," and it's like, why? Just why? So the no name thing is hilarious. Katie responds really well and is like, "Hey, if this is a real thing, so be it. If it's not, well, that's the worst thing that could happen." But you guys are in Portland from Missouri, then to Arkansas, right? And then to Portland. And so where did the mountain heart of, hey, we want to go to Portland come from, and what took you guys there?
Yeah, we've always kind of been adventurous folks. So even though we grew up in Missouri and Arkansas and we met in college and went to school together, both of us have kind of always had an affinity for the outdoors, for hiking, camping, kayaking, all that stuff. And growing up kind of in the Midwest in Missouri, my mom grew up in California. And so I always heard stories about the West Coast and how beautiful it was and how it kind of had everything.
Yeah.
And then kind of the way that I look in Missouri, kids knew that I wasn't from Missouri. And so they always thought I was from California, even though I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I just grew up with like this affinity for the West Coast.
Yeah.
And so when Katie and I got together, that was one of the things that we shared in common, is that we wanted to move out west. And so for us, that meant Washington State, Oregon, California, just somewhere out on the coast.
Yeah.
And we tried to move to Seattle right after we got married. Actually, our honeymoon plan was to live out of a 1984 Chevy van that had mold in it, no air conditioning, that we remodeled to live out of. And so from Yosemite National Park, where we got married, we were planning on just doing a Highway 1 road trip all the way up to Seattle, and I had a job lined up and everything, and this was 2019. And so when we were in Portland, Oregon, we were actually watching a documentary that Patagonia released in one of their stores. And I just remember looking at each other and just saying, no one's forcing us to go to Seattle.
Right.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And so in that moment of kind of conversation and honesty, we decided to go back to Arkansas instead. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened just a few months later. And so we felt stuck and always felt like we wanted to go out west. But every time we tried to do that, we didn't have really a good reason or a great reason for it. And so we were a part of a church just as volunteers, life group leaders, all that stuff in Arkansas, and became aware of a church out in Portland. And the space that I was working in at that time was recovery and a place called Teen Challenge.
Yep.
So working with kids who would come to us for 9 months to a year and go through our program. And so I was like, if I could continue that work, but do it with adults, and this church that we're becoming aware of is out in Portland, we kind of would have our community and that connection that we would need, but then also a job lined up, and then be in a place that we'd prefer, surrounded by the mountains. The coast is 2 hours away. So it just seemed like a good fit for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, that question about like why a heart for the mountains.
Yeah.
I grew up fishing and camping and hiking. Never really got into hunting too much.
Yeah.
But just have always spent my time outside. In the town that I grew up in is like a town of 2,000. So there wasn't much to do except for get in trouble and be outside.
How much trouble did you get in?
We don't have to talk about that. Enough to be a
significant
problem.
amount. Yeah.
To where if my parents got divorced when I was really young. So I was raised by a single mom.
Right.
My sister's 7 years older than me. And so if she had the financial means to send me to a place like Teen Challenge, let's just say she probably would have.
You would have been right there.
Yeah, I would have been a Teen Challenge kid for sure.
Well, praise be to God that you're here. We're so thankful to have you on our team and for the value that you add to this place. And so how is it that this mountain man scratches the itch of being out in nature in the humidity and stickiness of South Florida?
Yeah, man. Thankfully, through Gordon and just having conversations with him during our interview process, he really values transparency and honesty. And I think our team does. And I've really enjoyed that about our team. And so even during the interview, that was one of our things, even as we were processing. There's a place called House of Refuge here locally that a lot of people will go to, or like I'm doing a wedding this Saturday there. It's just a beautiful spot to look at the ocean and be in God's creation in a different way than what we're used to growing up, and so we were sitting there and felt like God was calling us here, even though our preference was the mountains and the seasons. But even in that conversation and processing with Gordon, he was like, hey, I'm from Washington State. I get what you're talking about. That's not just a want or a desire, but that can be a legitimate need. And so we can cater to that and help you get out of here to enjoy other places and rest well and vacation and have fun. And so I've really appreciated that, and that's made it helpful to where Katie and I do get to travel quite a bit for work, but then also just for vacation and go to places that isn't endless summer and sand and flat and hot and humid.
It could be tough here. So my wife gets that, my wife's from Portland too. And so she struggled our first, 3 or 4 years here. And I was like, I don't know if she gonna make it. So that means I don't know if we gonna make it. And so praise be to God that we began to develop some of those rhythms, just like you're talking about, of getting out of here. And the mountains aren't too far. Georgia's not too far. So that's a win for us.
We get to go to Tennessee, and then we're going to go check out Asheville in October, so we're stoked about that. And knowing that is like the crazy thing about Florida, how close it is to the Carolinas, to Georgia, and there's so much beauty here on the East Coast that we just have never explored. We never really spent any time on the East Coast of the United States, never imagined living in Florida. So now that we're here, we're trying to make the most of it. And so to answer that question kind of directly, like we've got into surfing a little bit and snorkeling, even though I'm terrified of the ocean. And I think I'm going to get eaten by a shark. And I don't think exploring the bottom of the ocean and finding shells is worth it. My life is not worth it to find a shell, but Katie loves it. And so we've gotten into that. But even recently, man, like I was sitting outside of a new coffee shop that just opened up a couple days ago, and it was like 93, super humid. And I was sitting outside and I was like, this isn't that bad.
Wow.
So
I tried that this morning. I don't like it. I want to do it. Everything in me is like, I want to be outside, but I am sweating profusely I can't.
I've saved a lot of money on a gym membership because I used to go to the sauna in Portland. But here it's like you just sit in your car, or you go for a bike ride, or you go run, and it's a natural sauna.
You're good to go. You have everything you need.
Yeah, I've saved a lot of money.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we're going to go down a track today that Chad's actually going to lead us down. What are we talking about today, man?
Yeah, again, thanks for letting me be on the Intentional podcast. And I know for us, we have a pretty good relationship and friendship that was formed even before the transition. And you mentioning Janae being from Portland, for us, as we were thinking about coming across the country yet again from Oregon to Florida, it was through conversation with the team and getting to know the team that we actually felt like, okay, this is a place that we can go to. And a conversation that we had with you and Janae at Waterfront. Just talking about like, what your transition and change was like coming to Florida was really helpful. And so we've really appreciated the friendships that we get to have with people.
For sure.
Starting with the staff.
Yeah.
And so being able to have that friendship with you is kind of just what I'm wanting to explore today, and just ask questions that are focused on maybe the professional pastoral side.
Yeah.
Maybe that people wouldn't know happens Monday through Thursday, and what our work life looks like and what your day in the life looks like.
We don't do anything. We're monks. Like, we do nothing. We don't plan anything. We're total monks here.
I wish that was true. The monastic fantasy.
Monastic fantasy,
is that we just pray and read the Bible.
Right.
And that's it. Prepare for Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I think diving into that would be kind of fun.
Let's do it.
All right, cool.
Let's go.
And so let's just start with like a day in the life of Miles.
Oh, man.
So like, if you want to talk about this morning, or what's on your schedule today, or what's an ideal day for you?
Yeah, ideal day, it varies based upon the day of the week. So every day, my day starts usually at 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'm usually in my study. I'm with this Bible. This Bible is significant only because the guy whose name is on it, Paul Rotigliano, he just passed away 2 weeks ago. And so he was kind of our operations coordinator at Liberty Football. He had given this Bible to my spiritual dad, Coach Gomes, and then Coach Gomes gave it to me. And so I'm in my study with this Bible every morning, reading a psalm, praying through a psalm, praying for our team, praying for my family, and any other things that pop up in my head as God brings it. And from there, my mind's usually running. And so I'm usually on go. So like this morning, I shot you guys a text, and I'm thinking about announcements. And that's one of 1,000 thoughts that are on my brain about this place that I'm praying and processing through first thing in the morning. So I'm getting ready for the day. I'm usually out of the house 7:30, 8 o'clock. Mondays are a little slower. I'll wake up the kid. I got two of them. So I got, how old's Addie's like 20 months and Justice is like crazy, 2 months. And so, well, no, 3 months now Justice is. And so I'll wake up Addie. I'll maybe give her bottle, which she can take herself actually. But for some reason we are still anyway, we won't dive into that. So do that, out of the house. Monday mornings, I'm at a coffee shop first thing in the morning. Actually, a credit to you, because you were like, hey, you think to write you could get out of here for the mornings? And I'm like, actually, I could. So I usually go to a coffee shop that I've been going to for a few months. I won't tell you where it is because I hide there, and it's awesome. And if you find me there, you find me, but
pretend like you don't know.
Yeah, pretend like you don't know me. And it's an awesome place. I go there, I write for usually a few weeks ahead of time. So right now I think we're about a month out for writings. And then I'll have an outline for the month after that. And so that's where I'll get ahead. And then I come in here right around lunchtime. Actually, I'll go home, work out, put a gym in my garage, which is awesome. Put an AC unit in there, which is even better. I'll go home, work out for lunch, and then I'll come in here for the afternoon, and I'll tell everybody good morning, even though it's afternoon. I usually just get that messed up in my brain. So that's usually Monday for me. Then I engage with the team, figure out whatever house cleaning items gotta happen around this place. And then Tuesday is a team day. So Tuesdays, like, we're going through practicing the way as a team, and that's been awesome. The conversations that we've had has the intimacy that I always say, into me you see, has allowed us as a team to see inside of one another and grow in our own personal spiritual formation as we process through, like, hey, how do we want to help the body grow? What is it that we want to implement there? And then really after that, it's staff meeting. We figure out, hey, what are the wins from this past week? We had people come to know Jesus, or we had this event, or we're celebrating life group launch, all types of things. How was online campus? We have 600 people that watch every week on our online campus.
That's insane.
It's kind of insane.
Yeah, every time our team shares that, I'm always so surprised.
I'm shocked.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Curtis will be like, it's a campus, and it is. It is 100% a campus. We probably could do a better job of engaging that campus, but we know that it's a thing, and we celebrate all the wins that we have. We go through, I call them house cleaning items, and that's where most people that are listening are probably like, what are the house cleaning items? And they adjust from adding staff members. Hey, this is where I'm thinking about us going, what we have coming up, pastoral retreat, who's in, who's out, what are we preparing for Sunday services, always turning screws. You know, Andy and I were just talking the other day, and he's like, you know, every Sunday service we're at a level of an A, you know, it's just, are we at an A minus, A plus? Where are we? And so our desire is always that we would be in an A plus to make much of Jesus with that purpose. And so, so we measure all of those things, look at all of those things. Business wise, you know, one of the things that we ask even as we kind of celebrate life group launch is like, hey, Chad, how many people signed up for life groups this past week? We had bounce houses, food trucks, rock and water here. And from a business standpoint, it's like, okay, like, was that worth it? Was that worth it for us to pay for those things, to enhance the community bit, to get people to stay? Did they actually do what our main desire for them to do was to ultimately jump into life groups? So can I look at the people that give to this place and our finance team and our spiritual leadership team and be like, hey, the ROI on that was like, we should continue to do it in that fashion. So we're looking at things in that fashion too, and trying to figure out, hey, should we continue to do it this way, or do we need to turn screws? So that's what Tuesday is all about. And then the afternoon is, my door is open after we have staff lunch, and it's anybody that wants to come in my office can come in. What I'm learning is that as a lead pastor, you know, as a student guy, when you and I office together, people flooded in my office all the time. Like, we couldn't get anything done. I literally had to go high to write and to get stuff done. And now as a lead pastor, when my office door is open, nobody wants to come in there no more. And so it's like, well, dang it. So, but the door stays open, and
sorry to jump in real quick, but why do you think that is? Like, seeing the change, and I'm sure that's one of the things that we'll talk about, is within the transition, kind of how your life has changed, your position has obviously changed, but also relationally, like the change that you've seen internally as a team. As we see you now, you are the guy. And so even though you have the door open and you are welcoming people, and I would say here more than any other place that I've ever worked, especially within the church, this has been a very welcoming place. And I know there's some of our team members even mentioned, like, if I can't go straight to the lead pastor and get 10, 15 minutes, and I have to start scheduling through an assistant meetings, or account, like, I'm out. And I think we've done a really good job of keeping that culture, relationships,
for sure,
you know. But even though your door's open, the mindset, and even for me, you know, the challenge sometimes is like, I know that door's open, but it feels like I'm going into the principal's office at times or whatever. So like, help me understand your mindset on that.
I don't know. I don't know, to be 100% honest. And I'm sure if I talk through it enough, I could come down to an assumption, and that's all it would be an assumption. But I think the relational dynamics, they definitely shift, you know. So all of us here have great horizontal relationships. Like, we are all brothers, you know, like that's just how this place has been. Like, this is a football locker room. As we integrate more females onto the team, you know, the football locker room will stay, but it'll turn very, you know, appropriate. And not to say that it's inappropriate, people, but you get what I'm saying, you know. And so it's very much so like, hey, this staff is full of brothers. We could always, one of the things even on our you know, our interview process and on the questionnaire is like, hey, could you last the 8-hour car ride? Can we take an 8-hour car ride with you and not kill you? You know, and that's culturally for us. That's like, hey, can you just be a bro? Like, are we going to spend the 8-hour car ride talking about only work or talking about only theology? Or can we just like shoot the breeze, you know? And if we can't, you're not going to make it on the team. And so like that for us culturally is a very big deal, no matter who's on the team. And so when you have those and you shift one of those people that you have a horizontal relationship or a really good horizontal relationship with, and then all of a sudden you also have to have a vertical relationship with them and you know, sometimes, you know, put them in hard spots, or sometimes he puts you in a hard spot, you know, to where growth has to happen, or you have to ask something that he might have to say no to, but you still want the horizontal and need the horizontal relationship. That can be tough. And so the dynamics shift a little bit. And so everybody's walking this plane of like, hey, I know you as a bro. I love you as a bro. We've done life together for 5 to 6 years, depending on how long, staff has been here. And it just changes. And so that change is a challenge. It's not an easy thing. And so I always explain it to people. I'm like, you lose the relationship with Gordon when Gordon leaves, and so that relationship, in the fashion that it was in, the vertical fashion that it was in, it dies, and then you lose that brother that you had every single day with you. Now that relationship between he and I is better, and it changes. The dynamic shifts because he's no longer my boss. But now I get to call and be like, hey man, how would you handle this? But at the end of the day, the weight of the decision is on me. It's no longer on him. I used to be able to go into his office when I made decisions as a student pastor and be like, hey, I made this call, but I don't think we should actually do it 6 months later. Can you tell me no so that I can tell them no? And the weight of the decision could be on him. Right. And it was great, and never thinking about, oh crap, that's going to be me soon, and now taking that weight on for people. And so that dynamic changed. Also, the team, it's like the team dynamic changes too. So it's kind of like you put to quote unquote, this is an extreme fashion to put it in, you put to death 10 relationships and friendships that you have, but they grow just in a different fashion. And so like I expected to mourn the Gordon relationship. I did not expect, or I wasn't prepared to mourn 10 other friendships and to have them grow in a different fashion. I just wasn't ready for that part. And so that I get. And so if I see it in that light, I can only imagine what it's like for you guys on the other side of like, I don't know if I can go. So like, for example, Kyle, came up into the office yesterday after staff meeting, and I was so excited. I felt like a kid. I was like, you're actually here to see me? Like you actually want to come in? And so I was like, come on, man. He never comes up. And then he came up again later in the afternoon. So I was like, I'd find myself giddy like a kid in a candy store. But then, it's like, all right, do I have to put on the friend hat right now, or do I have to put on the leader hat? And so sometimes I just want to put on the friend hat and be a bro. So I don't know if that really answers the question.
No, it's great. It's cool being able to hear kind of how that's changed, and just the transparency and honesty that you have experienced change relationally, and talking about you were expecting, or you knew the Gordon, losing him, as your boss, as a mentor, as a leader, as the lead guy. And unfortunately, sometimes I think the guys who are now in your position can easily be seen as the scapegoat or the fault man. Especially when you are now at the top. It's like, well, it was Miles actually who decided it. And now it's like, oh, I'm that guy who people are now looking at to make that final call. And so I'm sure there's a weight and a pressure that has changed in your experience, even here at TC3, but even personally. And so thanks for just kind of being open and honest and sharing about that. Something that you mentioned is that you're kind of expecting the grieving process of losing Gordon, but not the other 10 relationships. And how those changed. And so would you mind kind of digging into like, I wasn't expecting that, but I find myself here. And how do I emotionally process through that change?
Yeah, that came in real time. So the perfect example is I don't know, 2-3 months after transition or installation, I was in the kitchen downstairs with Dan and Connor, and we were just like, somebody had left, this is a bad, not bad, but just fat of me. Somebody had left cake like in the downstairs fridge, and so we're all eating a piece of cake together. What I considered having a very bro moment. And in that moment, we're just like shooting the breeze, hanging out. The conversation took a shift. And they began to ask me for stuff. And I had to, the bro moment died. And I had to shift and put a different hat on. And I was like, man, I have to be open and honest about, hey, I don't want to wear that hat right now. I just want to hang out with you guys for a second. Like if you need me in another capacity, like come see me in a different setting. I didn't communicate that, but that's what was rolling through my brain of like, man, how do I be honest about moments that I just want to enjoy, or maybe those moments just are never, that I have to be ready to switch hats on a dime now. And so that there's a tension there for me that was just challenging, that I was not prepared for. And so like, that's just one example to where I can think like, man, this is tough. And so that's happened a lot, often now. And you just grow into that, I guess, as a leader and in the position that I'm in. I just wasn't ready for it, to think that like, oh yeah, we can just have bro moments and hang out. But no, this might shift anytime within the conversation. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I get it. So.
Yeah, I remember even for us, like we had like a really good relationship and friendship when you were the students guy. Yeah. I've been the life groups and missions guy. We officed together, always had a good time and fun and getting to know one another. And then when the transition happened, I mean, I remember again, going back to valuing transparency and honesty here, me being a nobody coming from Portland, Oregon, and Gordon kind of finding me. Yeah. I was like, man, we're kind of doing our thing out here, and I'm not looking to ever work at a church again. Like I was doing what I wanted to do, and made an agreement that if I ever worked at a church again, it'd have to be very specific in what I did. Yeah. And so the conversations with Gordon, it was basically like he had to sell me on the idea to come here. Yeah. And then his response was always like, hey, if you don't think it's awesome, we don't want anybody to come here anyways and screw it up, because we got a pretty awesome thing going, That
sounds right. He's a heck of a salesman.
He's the man. So he's one of a kind for sure. But in those conversations, I remember just asking him like, hey, is there a transition plan? Yeah. Because I really like you. I like talking to you, and I would work for you and with you. But if you have in your mind that you're going to leave, and I show up and I committed to serve and work for you, and now I'm having to work for another guy that I don't know or I don't like, and we're moving from Oregon to Florida, like, I'm just not interested in that. Yeah. And thankfully, even though he didn't know me that well, he was like, yeah, we do have a transition plan. We do have a guy. I think you'd really like him.
Yo, nix the first part. Yes to the second one. No plan. He didn't share.
A plan in Gordon's mind. Yeah. Plans look differently based off of your personality and gifting and leadership, style.
I love them so much. We'll talk about that.
Anyway, it's the version of Gordon's plan. Yeah. But he was honest, and he's like, yeah, I have a guy in mind. Yeah. But that's not until 5 or 10 years down the road. So
okay, I agree with that.
In my mind, I was like, he's asking us to serve 3 years minimum. Yeah. That's kind of ideal. Yeah. I was like, 5 to 10 years, we won't even be here. So like, cool, I get to serve with Gordon the whole time.
I don't worry about this. Yeah.
And then the transition happened way sooner than what we were anticipating, and even what Gordon was anticipating. Yeah. All that being said, I remember, just to kind of bring this home, talking about the hats that we wear, and all of us have dual relationships in some capacity. Yeah. We work with friends, or some work with family members, or we have really good friends, but you're also their manager, supervisor, or boss. And so knowing what hat to wear in each given moment and how much that kind of ebbs and flows is a really good thing to focus on, is what hat am I wearing right now? And so our hat was coworkers, right, to where we're kind of running and owning our space and lanes, and we didn't really work ever together in any capacity. We were in kind of different lanes, right? But we had a really good relationship, and we all do as a staff, to where when we clock out, we'll go hang out. Right. We'll spend the weekends together. We'll sit on the back porch and watch the game, whatever. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to move here. Yeah. But I remember us having to have an intentional conversation to where you were honest with me and saying, hey, in this transition, now that I'm the lead guy, I really need your support and help. And I was like, man, I'm willing to do whatever. Right. But you're like, if I'm being honest, I don't feel like I can tell you no. Yeah. Or I'm worried to tell you no. Yeah. And so we had to have an honest conversation. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. We're putting on a different hat right now. Right. And so even though that we are close friends, we're more similar in age than, say, you and Gordon, or myself and Gordon. Gordon was further down the road and a mentor. Now it's kind of like you're peers. Further down the road, but we're more peers and buddies and friends and bros. But that doesn't mean at the end of the day, you're still my boss. Yeah. So we had to have that conversation where I was like, man, if there's anything that I ever do that you don't feel comfortable being honest with me or having to make a hard decision, like it might hurt in the moment, but I need you to know that you have the right to tell me yes or no, that you are my boss and my friend. And so how can we figure this out together?
Yeah. And those things have made this and the whole transition team wise so much easier, because it's like, yes, like we can have, Gordon always says like the last 10% of the conversation is the most important part of the conversation. Like it is. Like you can have the 90% bro factor, hey, we can work together factor, but there's going to be hard conversations along the way. And if we don't do these well, the 90% kind of gets derailed, And so being able to do that, it doesn't make it any less challenging or difficult, but it's like, hey, if we're real friends, we can do this. That doesn't make it easier. It just, we can do this. There's enough. I always think about it as like coins of trust in the bank. And so it's like, do I have enough money to make a withdrawal? Do I have enough relational coin to make a withdrawal and have a hard conversation? It may not be a withdrawal. I'm just not putting anything in relationally. And so it's like, I think that like with all the people on the staff, well, I have enough coin in the bank by God's grace and haven't had to make major withdrawals. So it's a win.
I love that. With the people who are watching or listening, kind of bringing this home to them, talking about hard conversations and kind of the last 10% of the conversation, knowing that you need to say something or ask something, but knowing that's going to be difficult, potentially create conflict, or let's just say culturally speaking, there are topics right now that are hard conversations to have with loved ones, friends, family members, coworkers in the church context, outside of the church.
Yeah, for sure.
And so what advice or direction would you give somebody who knows they need to have a hard conversation with their spouse, with their kid, with a coworker, with another church member, in their formation and becoming more like Jesus as, the election is coming closer. Of course, that's a hard conversation and topic to navigate. So we don't have to go there. But in those hard conversations, I'm thinking about that series that we previously did, Conflict Compass.
Right.
And so kind of bringing that back and bringing it home to people
that
who
feels
are
like
listening.
a year ago.
I know, man.
Good gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
This year's been wild.
Yeah.
But for you, any suggestion or advice or wisdom that you'd want to offer?
Yeah, my mind automatically goes to what I said previously. Make sure that you have enough relational coin in the bank. And so like if you look at that relationship and you think to yourself, like, I don't know if I have enough relational coin in the bank. Well, it's like, man, maybe you aren't the one to have the hard conversation then. Maybe it's somebody else's job that has enough relational coin and not you manipulating that other person that has the relational coin to have the conversation. That's first, or maybe you do see something and maybe you do need to address the truth in love and you're saying, I don't know if I have enough relational coin. Then it's celebrate them first. It's always like wrap something challenging in what they're doing well. And so it's like celebrate them. Give the coach, right? I always see things in teaching and coaching. So I hate it that my coaches say either I'm teaching it or I'm allowing it, right? And so it's like teach something first, how you want it done or or the expectation. And then if it gets done a different way, then you coach it, right? But if you're coaching something, if you're correcting, which is what coaching is, then it's wrap it in celebration, So it's like, hey, you're doing this really well. Or this has been awesome. Let me coach this. Let me give you something practical to hold on to so that you can apply this tomorrow. And I'm learning this literally in real time. And then celebrate them again, And so it's celebrate, it's correct, it's celebrate. 3 C's.
There you go, man.
Look at that.
Classic pastor.
Look at that. So that's a freaking win. So that's how I would go about it. Even when it comes to family, because there are so many hard conversations that are happening. If you get into politics, that's a whole nother realm. But I think the principle applies. The principle is still like, hey, I may not see your side, and the celebrate to that is help me understand. I may not agree, but help me get it. Teach me, So if you're only being infused with one ideal, if you're only being infused with one policy position, find somebody that you love that sees it from a different perspective and ask them to teach you. that is celebratory for them because you're asking them for their opinion.
Right.
So it's like celebrate them and seeking to learn from them, and then say, man, thank you. Here's how I see it, or seek out the opportunity to share yours if you feel the need to,
right.
Or if they ask you to.
Yeah.
Don't just freely offer it because they may not give a rip, and then celebrate them on the back end. So
it's like the idea that you want to lead with curiosity instead of leading with the conclusion,
right?
Assuming what they already think or value or believe.
Yeah.
Lead with curiosity and asking open-ended questions.
100%.
Help me understand, where you're coming from on this thing or whatever. It's like growing up as a kid, my parent, one of my parents, always would come in and it's like the swoop and poop. We've probably been under leaders or bosses or in organizations to where you feel like you're always in trouble, or you're going to the principal's office and you avoid the person who's in charge because they're just going to come in and crap on everything that you've done, and you're going to feel worse and shame and guilt, and then you're left to yourself to figure it out, and that was a lot of kind of the environment or setting in which I grew up in, but leading with curiosity instead of a conclusion, actually wanting to know, hey, even though I don't agree with what you chose to do or what you're currently doing, help me understand
why,
where we find ourselves, like how we find ourselves here and why, and actually being genuinely curious and knowing and wanting to get to know
100%
the person. I mean, that's how we connect, is through emotion. It's like the investment thing that you're talking about earlier. Before we withdraw with a correction, we need to invest by actually connecting. And we do that through a
relationship. 100%.
No, that's good.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Guys, I really hope that you listening got something out of this conversation and can choose, as you have these relational dynamics with family, coworkers, friends, whatever it may be, choose to be intentional, especially in how you bring correction, but also how you celebrate them prior to. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intentional Podcast. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.